Hello, everyone, and welcome to my panel for the love of anime BS, a needlessly complicated exploration of visual novels. It was me all along. That's right. Ha 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 ha. Strap in, because this is going to be some fast-paced stuff. Whether you have no idea what anime BS is, whether you know exactly what it is, whether you're just here for kanji or you just happen to have dropped by, thank you for joining me as I take you on this whirlwind tour of needlessly complicated stuff. So first off, what is anime BS? I don't know. You tell me. What are some if I tell you that, what do you think of in terms of themes, games, elements? Put it in the chat. I will come to it eventually, or I might ignore it because we might be short on time. We will see how things go. I'm going to try to keep us on time because I timed this and it was very fast. Here's a hint. It has something to do with the title. It is related to visual novels and something else. What's that something else? I don't entirely know. I will tell you that a visual novel is a video game. You can choose to believe me or not. Either way, we will go through it as we go through this panel. And that obviously means that Anime BS is some sort of a video game. Cool, great. We've solved it. It's solved. Plot holes. Plot holes is a good guess. Is a good guess. Okay. Cross-examining a parrot. You are not wrong. Looking at you, Phoenix Wright. Let's take a different tack. Let's talk about video games. Fan service. Fan service is a good guess. All of anime is BS. Yes, also good answers. Okay, here are a bunch of screenshots of video games, is what I'm going to tell you. Can you tell me what these games are? Murderboard's time travel. Rin knows exactly what's going on. These are all video games. The middle one is not intended to be a trick. It is actually from a video game. Video games are weird. We have Puyo Puyo Tetris on the left, Super Mario Odyssey in the bottom left, platformer. Middle one is Fortnite, because why wouldn't you want Rumi to face off against Peter Griffin and Darth Vader and Goku? Why not? Why not? A first-person shooter. Bottom right is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is an RPG, maybe. If you don't think it's an RPG, that's okay. That's okay, because we're going to talk about that. And in the top right, we have Minecraft, which can be combative, but it can also just be a game where you make stuff. And so I guess that puts it in the creative genre. It's fun. That's all that matters. We've got some ideas in here. We're getting places. Okay. Are these video games? These are screenshots from visual novels. The one on the left is from a game called Higurashi When They Cry, and the one on the right is from a game called Umineko When They Cry. I don't know why the title is that. Don't at me. I haven't played either of these games yet. I've seen bits and pieces of some of them. If I asked you if these were video games, you might say yes, because I told you that visual novels are games. They are games on an electronic device. Yes, okay. We're getting interesting definitions. They are video games. We don't have a firm reason why they are, but they are, and we're going to get to that. These screenshots are from more typical visual novels. They have some of the elements that you'll see in a lot of them. They don't look like the games that we're used to seeing, like on this previous screen. There's more plot here than Marvel Mad. Yes. And they happen to be in Japanese, notwithstanding that. But they look different. They look different compared to the other games that we're used to seeing. Why is that? What is up with that? Okay. Part of this ambiguity that we're seeing, like this looks like a game I know and this doesn't, is because of genres. Genres are the form of something, the shape, attributes and expectations of it. When I said earlier that on the left there was like Puyo Puyo Tetris, that's a puzzle game, you're like, I kind of know what a puzzle game looks like. The focus is on the puzzly bit. Like that's a dumb definition, but it's something. And when I said there's a first-person shooter, like part of it's in the name. First-person perspective, you're shooty bang-banging things. That tells you a lot, and the way that the game is presented tells you a lot. That's the genre. When I say that Zelda is an RPG, that's fuzzy, that's ambiguous, that's less clear, because what does it mean to be an RPG? RPG stands for role-playing game. I play a role in pretty much any game that I'm playing, so what does that mean? If I used Final Fantasy as an example, Final Fantasy games are easier for folks to say, absolutely, that's an RPG. That's a JRPG, a Japanese RPG. What's the difference? I don't know. Doesn't matter to me, but it matters to some people. Um, the point being that it's hard to pin down what these expectations are. And for visual novels, it's especially hard. In the medium of video games, we have certain expectations of different genres, but some genres are better defined than others. But this lack of clarity extends all the way to video games. See what? CRPG? Canadian RPG? What does the C stand for? T would be tactics. C is I don't know. Anyway, let me know. I'm now curious. Canada, no, it couldn't be. Um, Computer? What? Chinese? Okay, weird. Interesting. Um, in preparing for this panel, I learned that we've been arguing about what humans have been arguing since we existed. Full stop. Um, for the purposes of this panel, humans have been arguing about what games are for a very long time. Video games have only existed since the 1970s. No, we haven't. Thanks. Thank you. Oh, like Baldur's Gate. Okay. Since the 1970s. So we can talk about games more generally. There's the sociologist, this comes up in literature, Roger Caillois. I'm really bad at French. Wrote a book called Les Jeux et les Hommes about a sociological study about games. And this is a definition that was used for a long time in games. Games are fun, they're separate, they're uncertain, they're not productive. You're not doing this for work, which is maybe not true today necessarily, and some other qualities. We don't need to read through this because it's not what we're going to use for our definition of video games. We get to the 1980s, game design starts to become a real thing because, hey, video games exist. That's not the only motivator, but we see other kinds. Yeah, farming simulators. Oh, ZK, that's a great point. Oh man, we're gonna come to that. Okay. There's this game designer, Chris Crawford, who's cited a lot, and they come up with these really neat dichotomies of what is and isn't a game, but also we can summarize as an interactive, goal-oriented activity made for money with active agents to play against in which players can interfere with each other. There's a couple things that don't really stand up. The made for money part is definitely not true. But also when we think about some of the games that we play, like farming simulators, is it interactive? Yes. Are there goals? Yes, I guess. Have the best farm, the biggest farm. Um, do we have agents to play against? Yes, the computer can be an agent, sure. Can we interfere with each other? I guess, maybe, sort of. It's we've like pinned it down, but it still feels fuzzy. Still doesn't feel quite right. And also, this is a panel on, anime BS and visual novels. It's not about video games. We're not talking about that. So let's pick a definition that's a little bit more, either more concrete or more fuzzy. I don't know. It's my panel. So we're just going to head on and make something that's easier for us to latch onto because it's simpler. It's definitely simpler. In the literature, there's this person, Kevin J. Maroney, who has a nice, pithy sentence that we can use for video games. Video games are a game is a form of play with goals and structure. Farming simulator meets that requirement, but we can also think of this in terms of games having two components: a narratological, a story component, that is, the game is a medium of narrative and storytelling, and games have a ludological, a play component. Games are interactive systems where the story is of secondary importance, which immediately flies up against visual novels, because visual novels do not have a lot of interactive systems, even though I have not explained what that is, which is why we have this, which explains absolutely nothing. This is a screenshot from a different visual novel. This is from a visual novel called Steins Gate. I have not played it. There is an anime for it. I don't know which one I am supposed to do first, the anime or the video game. If you have suggestions, I will gladly take them. But you can see in this that there are elements similar to the other screenshots from earlier. There's text prominently displayed, there's visuals, and some other stuff that may or may not be important. I don't know. I haven't played this game before. And is that enough? Is that enough for us to say a visual novel is a text game that has graphics? Maybe. I'm not sure, but we can dig deeper. We can dig deeper by digging backwards. That analogy got away from me. I've only watched the Steins Gate anime. It was standalone enough and quite good. Okay. Maybe I'll check that out. I know it involves time travel, and I love that, which is why we're going to do exactly that. We're going to go back in history to learn about the origins. Take up, yeah, I know. We're going to go back in time to talk about the history of visual novels, which is actually a lot of history about Japan, but we're going to go through it pretty quickly and just touch on the bits that relate to visual novels so that we can talk about anime BS. Okay. So, unsurprisingly, since we've shown a lot of text that is in Japanese, visual novels trace their history back to Japan. What might be surprising to you is how far back in time we go to start to see the origins of stuff that ends up in visual novels. And again, this isn't all unique to visual novels. Some of it is just, manga and anime and just Japanese culture. But some of it is just like, oh, I can see the through line from here to there. So before the turn of the 19th century, Japan opens up. Commodore Perry of America is open the country, stop having it be closed. The country opens up for whatever reason. It goes from a very isolationist country to a country that is now fascinated with all of the things, all of the culture outside of Japan. And one of those things that really starts to take root are detective stories. You start to see works from Edgar Allan Poe, like The Murders in the Rue Morgue, get translated. You see Anna Catherine Green's XYZ, a detective story, get translated. And the Japanese public loves this. They're just fascinated with these stories because they do something that they hadn't quite seen before. They take what is real, what is true, what is actual, and combine it with fiction in a way that hadn't been done before. You're telling these murder mysteries in a believable way where you're curious, like, how does this happen? What happens? How does it all work out? And even though it's fiction, it feels more real. It feels believable. You can see this immediately in the future, in the 2000s, late 1990s, with games like the Ace Attorney series, where you have a detective trying to solve, not really a detective, you're in a courtroom. Also around this time, the part that I forgot to mention is that the Japanese public gets interested in court reform, justice, and law. Because the country is opening up, it's forming a constitution, all this other stuff. Interested in justice, more reporting on that. Sorry, that's where you get Phoenix Wright, the combination of detective stories and justice. That is also, you can see the through line in games like Danganronpa, which are like, hey, a bunch of kids are trapped in a school and they either have to murder everyone until one person survives or work together in a Lord of the Flies situation. But you have detective stories, yeah. Fast forward past World War II, because man, that's a whole period of history. This whole this slide is probably a history panel on its own. I need to play 100. Yeah, I've heard good things. I haven't played through it yet. Fast forward to the 1950s, people who were cartoonists, satirists, who previously would have been working for the government or the military during the war, don't have to do that anymore. And you see artists like Osamu Tezuka start to produce works like Astro Boy and Princess Knight, and works that previously would have been focused on children, is cute, looks cute, is cute. You now have stories that are is cute, grips with the nature of humanity, is cute, grips with the nature of good and evil. You have stories that can be look like they're for kids and even have kids read them, but you have serious stories that can also be consumed by adults. And you see this happen in manga. You see manga proliferate in different ways through the 1950s and 60s. You see different genres of manga crop up. You see shoujo, manga that is focused for young girls and young women. You see like some of the stereotypical components, the tropey components of the very large eyes, different panel arrangements for the graphics, flowers everywhere, pretty boys, all of this kind of stuff. You see romance manga, you see ballet manga, you see all of this stuff. And in the 1960s, you see this pattern continue with things like Mahou Shoujo, magical girl manga, that continues. And in as much as it's like, yeah, this shows up everywhere today, you can see the direct influence of this in games like Tokimeki Memorial, which is a visual novel, kind of a dating sim produced by Konami in the mid 90s, where we've got a high school setting, is romance. As you can see, we've already got, even though it's the mid 90s, like the layout of a visual novel. It's all starting to get pieced together. Fast forward to the 1970s, video games now exist. We're not talking about whatever we were in the last slide. Video games exist. Video games are being made in North America, and video games are being made in Japan. And this game comes out called Mystery House. This is one of the first adventure games, and it was, I think, the first made by a company that eventually became Sierra, which you might know for like, I think it's The Legend of Monkey Island and all those kinds of games, like adventure game foundations. This game gets ported to Japan. Ported is generous. This is probably one of the first examples of intellectual property infringement. It's ported. There are many changes made, some for technical reasons and others for other reasons. But for whatever reason, it gets moved to Japan, creates a boom of adventure games. But what's interesting is that this gives us an opportunity to talk about like why and how this happened. So in the far right of this image, like pretty much right next to my face over here, we have some probably too low resolution, but for you to see, characters, Japanese characters compared to English characters. In the early years of computing, everything was kind of optimized for rendering English text. Why? Because they were made in places that spoke English. And so when computing was more available in like Japan and other countries, we have a problem because the English language can be represented or was represented in little small pixely bits. You can show an ASCII character in like an 8x8 grid of pixels. And you can do that for some Japanese characters, for like hiragana and katakana, which are like the phonetic alphabet of Japan. But when you have all the ideograms, all the characters, the kanji that come from like China originally, you can't do that because you have like this very complex thing that is drawn very tiny and then you can't understand what it's trying to say. Not helpful. And so Japanese computers focus more heavily on being able to render text, but more importantly, to do that, they have to render things at a higher resolution. They need to be able to render high quality text and images. And you can see that with the example here. On the left-hand side, this is from the Apple II version of the game. You see Mystery House that was released in North America. You got like some weird gremlins in a room, I guess, and a weird gremlin guy putting boxes on the ground. I know the graphics are rudimentary because of the time period, but also it looks like somebody made it in MS Paint. Okay? Like it's crappy looking. In Japan, because you have higher resolution graphics, you might not be able to render things as quickly, so you can't like quickly show animations and things like that, but you can show big pictures, detailed pictures. And so even here you can see, instead of a room full of gremlins or goblins or whatever, you see what look like real people. They're not super detailed, but they're people. And in the scene below it, you have what is much more clearly a guy standing in front of, I don't know, some sort of mass graves or holes in the ground or something. And this fundamental difference in technology is what enables a lot of visual novels, because if you can only render a lot of text, you're going to use a lot of text. And if you can render high quality graphics, you're going to use high quality graphics. You're not going to try to animate things. You're going to use the things that you have. And so this lays the foundation for a lot of visual novels. Moving into the present a little bit closer, this is the late 1980s. We have arguably the first visual novel ever created, a game called the Portopia Serial Murder Case, which I believe has been remastered at this point and looks nothing like the crappy NES whatever graphics in the bottom. It was developed by Chunsoft, the same Chunsoft that became Spike Chunsoft that produced Danganronpa and other games. It was published by Enix, the same Square Enix, or the same Enix that became Square Enix. And it was designed by Yuji Horii, the creator of, or one of the creators of Dragon Quest, and also Chrono Trigger. I like Chrono Trigger. It's still got an adventure game vibe. It's got a point and click interface, or I guess textual interface. But you can see we've got the layout. We've got big graphics, big text. We're starting to get visual novels. We're starting to see what that looks like. Same time, there's a game called Neurocode that comes out. Basically an ad for this idol. I do like Chrono Trigger, Dan. I will never stop. I'll never stop time traveling. I will never stop chrono triggering. There's this game, Noriko, which is, I think it's a dating sim. I forget the specifics, but it's a visual novel. Mostly follows the life of this idol. But what's interesting about it is it uses both CD technology and audio technology. So we start to see voice acting in video games. I believe, interestingly enough, the same technology is used for like some Sega CD game with Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. I don't know. History is wild. And on the right hand side, you can see at almost the same time, Snatcher is released. It's later re released on the Sega CD. This isn't the first time. Made by Hideo Kojima. Yes, that's right. The Hideo Kojima who is famous for Metal Gear Solid, Death Stranding, and probably Zone of the Enders. I forget the other one that he did. But again, big graphics, anime, manga style graphics, a lot of text. Still pretty rough, but it's there. The foundations are there. Oh, yeah, it's all coming together. We're starting to see what a visual novel truly is. And I swear to God, anime BS. If we take a Venn diagram of all the different genres that we have talked about so far, or that we've touched on, or that you can kind of intuit, there's fiction, stories that aren't real. There's interactive fiction, stories that aren't real that you can interact with. A choose your own adventure is interactive fiction that's not a video game. But we've talked about video game interactive fiction, like adventure games. Haven't talked about them too much, but that's okay. And we've worked around like, what the heck is a visual novel? And we're almost there. We're here-ish. Visual novels are adventure games that are interactive fiction that maybe sometimes have audio drama elements. Maybe they're point and click, maybe they're hypertext. Love me a good Venn diagram. Yeah, this is not to scale. I'm pretty sure fiction is much larger and some of these are different sizes, but you get the idea. We're circling in on what a visual novel is, right? Like we gotta know what a visual novel is now. We gotta know. We must. Take a little breather and have a little bowl of water because we still got more panel to get through. Do we know? Do we know what a visual novel is? Let's ask the internet. Let's get more confidence. Let's ask the internet. Okay. You may have seen these before. These are alignment grids. They're not scientific or anything. They're just made for fun. They're based off of the idea in Dungeons and Dragons of alignment that goes between good and evil, law and chaos. A novel with visuals. Yes, I mean, you're not wrong. You are not wrong. So I pulled a handful of these because I think it helps us to get even closer to what a visual novel is beyond just a novel with visuals. In the top left, whether or not you can read it, we have an example that's like gameplay versus anime. So we're already seeing anime BS pop up in here, whatever that means. In the top right, we have interactivity versus presentation. So, okay, we're like, there's gameplay again, sort of. In the bottom left, it's graphics. What is it? It's imagery versus narrative. So story again. And in the bottom right, we have interactive versus narrative. So now we have interactive and story. These are all the things we've been talking about. And sure, some of these options are wild, like options that range from like, yeah, that kind of makes sense to there is no way. You can't see it very well, maybe, but interactive, chaotic, presentation, rebel in the top right. Super Mario Sunshine is a visual novel. No, I will not accept that. Super Mario Sunshine is not a visual novel. I know everything's made up. It is not. I'm not going to go there. And for what it's worth, these are my opinions. Disco Elysium is a visual novel. Persona 5 is a visual novel. 13 Sentinels is 100% a visual novel. You can at me. Is it an isekai? Also, no. Not Super Mario Sunshine is definitely not an isekai. These opinions don't matter, but they highlight that like even when you talk to like get the wisdom of the crowds, it's not clear 100% what a visual novel is. Fortunately, I didn't have to do any work. That's a lie. I did a lot of work for this panel. Fortunately, back in 2021, some folks from the University of California, Santa Cruz, set out to answer this exact question in a way that is very easy for me to Google. They made a paper titled, "What is a Visual Novel?" Thank you. Thank you so much. I didn't do most of it last night. I just did a bunch of it last night. They compiled the existing literature, which was 30 different academic definitions. They collected a corpus of over 50 visual novel games, had a single researcher played each of these games for at least 10 hours or to completion, whichever came first, to ensure that the data was all tagged consistently, all in the hopes of coming up with a unified answer for what is a visual novel. And the answer they come up with was 42. No, that's not what happened. Also, that's like 500 hours. That's a lot of game time. What they did come up with, unsurprisingly, is they took out all these academic definitions, broke them down into features to try to understand, like, okay, so these text doesn't align, but are there like bits from all these texts that we can unify? And there wasn't a ton of agreement. There were themes. There were broad themes and categories. Art and aesthetic was important. Things like background art, static characters, sound effects, narrative structure, branching versus linear, interaction. Narrative is important, but also like action menu and dialogue and stuff, and story quality as another category. Fun fact: the only thing that's in its own box in story quality is romance, which means one of the definitions was like, hey, romance is important to visual novels, which apparently is not true. It's very not true, as it turns out. When they mapped all these features, amazing success getting credit for your gaming hobby, right? When they mapped all these features to definitions, there was not a lot of agreement. That left chart is like basically how much agreement is there in the definitions. Almost all of the definitions were like, hey, some amount of interaction is required, which is like, thanks, it's a video game. The next highest categories were like, okay, branching is important maybe, and narrative is important. Yeah, romance is not required. So like the definitions are way off. Nobody has any idea. But when they took a look at the 50 games and were like, what qualities do these games have? It starts to become a bit clearer about what a visual novel is. Visual novels are games that are narrative focused, have some interactivity, background art, static scenes, sound effects, music, text boxes, clicking, action menu, dialogue. And like, that's helpful a little bit in the sense that we've scoped it down from all video games ever to slightly less than all video games ever. I know that's just a single study, but come on, guys. I'm trying to do a panel here and you're not doing me any favors. Slightly less. Woo. Yeah. Man. So much like with how do we define video games, let's do something helpful. Let's find a definition that's easier for us to fit in our heads, that is more definitive, for lack of a better word. And I'm lazy, so let's use other resources. In particular, we can use this book. I actually have this book. It's a book called The History and Allure of Interactive Visual Novels, which is exactly what it says on the tin. It is quite dense. It is more academic focused, so it can tend to be like wordy, but it is really fascinating to read through. But that's not what we're here for. We just want a definition. Fortunately, at the beginning of the book, it's just like, hey, there's been a lot of research into this and we don't really have a strong definition. So we're going to break it down. The first chapter is just what is a visual novel. And I'm going to break it down even further. A visual novel is a video game that has meaningful interactivity that often includes a branching narrative. It emphasizes narrative and encourages the gamer to replay. And it uses multiple genres and vertical intertextuality for complex narratives. That is a bunch of words that will make more sense in a little bit, I swear. Okay, so what is meaningful interactivity? Meaningful interaction. Meaningful interaction is a bit hard to pin down, especially in a game that is primarily defined by reading a lot of text. Because like, what could you meaningfully do if all you're doing is picking some choices and reading a bunch of text? It definitely looks different than other gaming genres. First off, the player needs to have agency. Not in the sense they have total control over what's going on, but in the sense that there are actually choices to be made, and that those choices have impact and consequences on the narrative. These choices don't need to appear to matter. They don't need to be obvious what they do. The impact doesn't need to be known. They just need to do things. Your choices need to lead somewhere because in a game, again, that is primarily driven by text, if you make choices that don't matter, it's boring. It's really boring. You're like, why even present me with the option? People will get bored and stop playing. But a good example of a game that demonstrates this, a visual novel game that demonstrates this, is a game called Scarlet Hollow. Scarlet Hollow begins with you going to your aunt's funeral, hanging out with your cousin, and visiting your childhood friend, and getting wrapped up in a whole bunch of paranormal stuff. It's like a choose your own adventure books, but a game. That's not that far off. Um, it's pretty close. What's really interesting about Scarlet Hollow is like, yes, there are branching paths. Yes, Dustin. I'll get to Dustin. Dustin's in here. Well, he's not, but I talk about Dustin. Um, you deal with, sorry, paranormal stuff. What's interesting is that the way that this plays out is that you make choices that may not seem to matter, but they help to build your relationship with certain characters. And typically in visual novels, different choices literally lock you into different routes. But in this game, you build out different stats, which affect the dialogue that you get with certain characters and ultimately how certain decisions are made. It impacts the plot, but not in a way that you might expect or is obvious. Similarly, even though it's not super exciting, it's pretty basic. Meaningful interaction can also mean just being able to interact with the narrative. Visual novel games often include fast forward, auto advance, save and load, skip scenes that you've already seen, because again, these are quite text dense games. And if you are going through a second route of a game and you have to repeat something that you've already seen 3 or 4 or 5 times, it gets boring and you would like to move on. You can see an example of that at the bottom of the screen. It's different in different games, but it's similar across most of them. What's also interesting about meaningful interaction is that that can also mean meaningful non-interaction. For example, when control or agency is taken away from the player. This can be as simple as games like in Phoenix Wright, where certain characters will automatically advance the dialogue, automatically and unexpectedly. But it can also apply to games like Doki Doki Literature Club, a game where you join a poetry club with your childhood friend and nothing else happens. That is 100% not true, and I will not spoil anything about this game other than to say nothing else happens. Thanks, Dan. Other than to say that the game developer had to submit a patch to the game engine to disable some expected functionality. I highly recommend this game, but it is surprisingly a spooky game, a scary game. Another common element for visual novels is the first-person perspective, not in terms of you are the character in the game and you personalize it and it's you, not in the sense that it's like a first-person shooter where you can control the camera, but first person in the sense that everything takes place. You are taking on the role of the main character, the protagonist, whichever, and you are experiencing things from their perspective. This has multiple different effects. For one thing, you have elements like narration, which are not present in other games. When somebody is describing what is happening, you are hearing their inner thoughts. Other games leave the story to play out in dialogue, which is a different experience. You have to piece together context and meaning on your own. You get more context and meaning from the character, the player, because it's first person. And also you don't often see the sprite of yourself. Also, this includes things, hopefully they are reliable. Yeah, not always guaranteed. Oh, there's so much that I could say. I'm not going to touch on that. This also raises an interesting point about sound in visual novels. When we're playing a game, we often hear a lot of sound, which is non-diegetic. Diegetic in this case just means it is not part of the story and narrative. When you hear music playing in a battle, that is not what the players in the game, the people in the game world are hearing. That's for you. That's for you, the player. There are, however, diegetic sounds that are part of the universe. When a character is speaking in game, when there are sound effects in game, like people fighting, those are in the world of the game, and they provide another way to play out the narrative. Also interesting is when games and movies and visual novels play with this because you're like, wait, why do I hear these pizzicato strings? You're like, oh, that's happening as part of the narrative. It's not just for fun to heighten the tension. Um, Visual novel games also often have a branching narrative and multiple endings. Uh, because replayability is so important to the experience, you kind of have to mix things up. At its simplest, a visual novel can just be no branching. It can be a linear story with no choices. There's actually a special term for this, kinetic novels, but I don't think they're mechanically very interesting. There's not any meaningful interaction, and by my earlier definition, not a game. Diegesis. Yeah, diegesis. Now we're getting to my kind of nerdy. I apologize. That might be the deepest we go. Um, but at the same time, with narratives and replayability, we often have stories that have different kinds of branching. Sorry, you can have branching for every decision. People don't often do that because combinatorially it explodes. You don't want a decision in chapter one where like you picked a toothpick and now every ending needs to take reference to that. So usually there are different ways of branching stories. Detours are pretty common. If you meet certain requirements, you might see an extra scene. Gauntlet is incredibly common. If you've played any of the Danganronpa games or Ace Attorney games, like basically there is a set path. You're going from point A to point B. And if you make a mistake or you get a guilty verdict, you get a bad ending. Sometimes that ending is unique. A lot of the times it is not. And it's a gauntlet. You got to get all the right choices. You got to make all the best choices. There's also split and merge where you get different scenes, but ultimately they don't impact the ending. And the latter where once you reach a certain point of no return, you've kind of like shunted onto a different timeline. This is really common for games with character roots where you want to like date somebody and it's like now you're pursuing this person, so other options are locked off. Definitely thinking of something different when I hear kinetic novels. It's a company named it that and then it kind of stuck, I think is the story. You can see examples of this. The Zero Escape series is really well known for this, and also I've described branching like you can see it in the games. Most of the time you can't. You have no idea where you are on a branch. Zero Escape, Zero Time Dilemma are different because they actually show you, and we can see examples here from 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors. We have a split and merge at the top and a detour on the left bottom. Virtue's Last Reward, the second game. There are technically spoilers here. If you can read this text, I don't know that you can. But in the second game, what's interesting is that all of the routes are ladders. You make a choice, and all choices put you on a path. 999 is so good. I highly recommend it. There's also parallel branching that is used in some visual novels, which is largely the idea where you can have multiple stories that converge and come together, and is often used in cases where you're covering multiple perspectives. One example of this that I love a lot too is 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. I don't even know how to describe this game. It's a game that takes place in multiple time periods, and there's time travel, kind of, sort of, and there's also giant robots. My God, I don't know. Anyway, in this game, the way you play it out is you follow one of the different characters, and there's like 13 of them. And in those parts, you play through a sort of point and click adventure mode, occasionally interrupted by story locks, conditions that need to be met before the story can progress, and sometimes tactics sections. That's part of it. Yeah. The game is fantastic, but it's like, oh my God, there's so much going on. This is an excerpt from the murder board that I drew up towards the end of the game when I thought I knew what was going on. I was pretty close. This is only a subsection. It's a great game, but oh my God, I was just like me trying to figure out what's going on. Okay, keeping an eye on time here. Visual novels also tend to be multi-genre or complex. This isn't just a synonym for complicated, even though it does feel that way sometimes. Vertical intertextuality is just a fancy way of saying that it draws from other works and other works in different areas. So like this might mean historically, or much more common in the games that I've seen, from different games. This means that in a visual novel where you're supposed to be simulating a mission to Mars, you might end up talking about something called the Sleeping Beauty problem, which I don't remember and don't have time to dig into. This is from Zero Time Dilemma, the third game in the series. Or the importance of a single solitary snail from someone talking to you in a plague doctor's outfit. Is it relevant? I don't know. Maybe. Does it make sense? Not yet. It doesn't. Um, in this sense, a lot of visual novels defy their genre in unconventional ways, like Scarlet Hollow. We've already talked about how the plot of the game a little bit, and I mentioned the dynamic relationship element, but fundamentally, this is a game about unraveling what is going on in this town. But at the same time, there's this romantic bit. You can actually date, I think the guy in the background is the librarian, and you can date Kanika, who's on the left there, and you can date the person on the right there. I've forgotten their name. But it's just like, it's not a dating game. It's not a romance sim, but there are romance sim elements. Um, Lastly, a lot of visual novels have layers in the sense that the game you start playing isn't always the one that you finish playing. Part of this is due to replayability. Once you have more context about characters' motivations and their backgrounds and whatnot from the alternate routes, you're like, oh, the story makes more sense and it becomes deeper and more layered. Um, so at this point, we're definitely starting to get a sense of what a visual novel looks like, and maybe now we can pin down what the heck anime BS is. After all, we're running out of time in this panel. I think I'm behind even my earlier estimates, so we've really got a mosey. We know that visual novels are story and play and interactivity and replayability and complex, and anime BS is that and something else. What is the something else? What is anime BS? I can say that it's a visual novel, but different. I can try to present this as a mathy thing. I can say, give you a syllogism like most visual novels are anime BS, but not all anime BS are visual novels. I can call back to our definition of a game and say it's a video game where the gameplay is secondary. I can say it's a novel with visuals. I can tell you that anime BS is an aesthetic, a particular look, in a way that you can think, oh, this is definitely an anime. Or that anime BS is a combination of tropes and slightly nonsensical, goofy, overcomplicated, over the top, melodramatic shenanigans that shouldn't make sense, but gosh darn it, they do by their own internal logic in a way that's very anime. I can even tell you it's moments like this from Aviary Attorney. This bird knows exactly how courtrooms work. You should just slam that evidence down and be like, bam, inconsistency. This whole courtroom is out of order. Case closed. That's anime BS. I can tell you that anime BS is like in Phoenix Wright, how the prosecution can just like whip anyone, including the judge. That's anime BS. Or how everyone accepts that Maya can get possessed by her dead sister Mia via channeling. This was a whole case in the thing. But discovery and perjury just aren't a thing? What? Or like how this guy from the Somnium Files looks. Why is his head a square? Nobody else's head is a square. He has a son. His son is fine. His mother is fine. Why? Or this guy. What is up with this guy? To be fair, this guy gets an explanation of the game, but just like, seriously, what the heck? Or like, is this a standard issue uniform for your partner? Is this a standard issue uniform? I don't know. It's stuff. It's anime BS. It's stuff. All of those things are definitely anime BS, but that also ignores the path that I have taken us on today and the lessons we've learned along the way. I swear I'm not doing this is the journey we've taken today. This whole time we've been talking about trying to define games and video games and visual novels. We've been trying to take all of this complexity and fit it neatly into little boxes with clean labels, just like we do in real life. And labels are made up. The real world is messy. I'm not trying to go full-on nihilist here and tell you that nothing means anything other than the meaning you've ascribed to things, or that so many rules are made up. These are things that are true. These are things that like shoot your shot, live your best life. And these are definitely things that feel appropriate for a panel on anime BS, but it's just a vibe. It's easier for me to concretely say it's just a vibe. But you've been here the whole time, and that seems kind of mean to just be like, really, Nick? Really? That's all we got? It's just a vibe? So let me give you some more examples, and I'll have to blast through these quickly in the interest of time. Everything is made up and the points don't matter. We have laws because we agree to them because they are for the good of the public. This is not going, I'm not trying to be political. I'm just, yeah, sorry, we'll continue on. Okay, this is funny. I love this. Slay the Princess is a game where you have to slay the princess, and I would love to tell you more about it than that, but that is literally the premise of the game. It is not a very long game. You can play it in a few hours. There are multiple routes, and as it turns out, once you slay the princess or don't, things happen, and things happen in really weird ways. This is from one of the very weird ways. This is a legit screenshot from the game where things, whatever, doesn't matter. This is a real screenshot. This is a fantastic game that you should play. It is voice acted. This is anime BS. That's anime BS. Nier, Automata, Replicant, Drakengard, etc. Nier is a game that comes from the ending E of like Drakengard 2 or something, and then Automata comes from like ending F of Nier. That is already the precursor to a bunch of anime BS. But like, look at like, you don't have to have played this game. Just look at it. This is in an apocalyptic world, and like, what are they wearing? A2 in the background there has heels. That is not practical. That's just shenanigans. Is the blindfold explained? I think it's in one of the light novels. I don't know. I haven't read them. This is definitely anime BS, even though it's an action game. This is an action game. It is not a visual novel. This is a visual novel. This is not a visual novel. Okay. Metal Gear Solid is definitely anime BS. Love blooming on the battlefield. Nerdy guy peeing his pants in the middle of a fight. Stealth action sections, but like little cutscenes with the codex. Snake eventually becoming like dad to a kid with like the nerdy guy. Definitely anime BS. The opera scene in Final Fantasy VI, you're playing this RPG. This magic general can like now sing and perform in the opera with little experience, and then an octopus shows up to fight, and then you're snatched away by this like roguish airship captain. That's anime BS. It's really good. I like, especially in the remaster, it's really good. Oh my god. I picked a screenshot for this game and I'm like, couldn't be more perfect. Yeah, suplexing a train, exactly. Date Everything is a game where you can put on technological glasses and turn inanimate objects into things that you can date. It has the look of a visual novel, plays very similarly to a visual novel on a dating sim. Those are just Super Sentai. The quote, this says like 5 handsome himbos want to talk with you. You better believe that's anime BS. All voiced by Robbie Damon. Shoot, yeah, okay, nice. You don't have to believe me about any of this. You don't have to believe that that's anime BS. Any of my stuff about like what's a visual novel. That's fine. You probably can't read this. I can barely read this. I have compiled all of the games in my Steam library that are tagged with either anime or visual novel. This column here, which is a bunch of games, is all the ones that I finished. And this column here is all the ones that I've played some of, or a little bit of, or like streamed with other folks. And here are the games in the library that I want to play. Games that I'm going to get to eventually. I have a vested interest in anime BS. This doesn't even include wishlist stuff, although that's probably shorter. I want to play more anime BS. They take a lot of time. They're good. I love it. I love this stuff. This is where Venn diagrams are required. Yeah. So I've talked a lot about like, what is a visual novel? What is a game? What is anime-s? I'm going to turn the tables and with the remaining time very rapidly tell you why anime BS. I guess not how. Why? Why should you try out anime BS? I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to help you learn to love anime BS, or at least give it a shot. Okay. What if you wanted to play a game that was like Among Us, but also werewolf, but in space with aliens, and a plot that plays out over multiple loops. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. You should check out Noja, which I have recently learned is also an anime. What if the Greek gods were real and you were accused of accidentally killing the last muse? And what if it was a musical? This is a visual novel. This is sort of a visual novel. It's also a musical. And by musical, I'm serious. It's got Laura Bailey, Erika Ishii, Felicia Day, Troy Baker, Rahul Kohli are the people that I recognize. It's also pretty short. What if you just went to therapy? Good advice for everybody. Also, you can learn about therapy. But seriously, what if you were a Western, like from the Wild West, vampire who started learning about therapy to be a better person? A vampire. But all of the therapy sessions took place in the back of a German club with a healthy, sex positive attitudes. And also, you can't fail. There's no wrong answers. Great game. I've only played a little bit of. What if we made an edgy platforming first person shooter, but Steve Bloom voiced the main character? In heaven? I haven't played this in a while, but I really enjoyed Neon White when I was playing it. What if we made the world's largest PowerPoint presentation, but it was also a visual novel somehow, and it taught you how to do your taxes with romance options? That is Don't Fraud My Heart, a game that at this point has not yet been released, but I am very much looking forward to. There's a ton of variety in visual novels. But if that doesn't sell you, I can also sell you on the money. If you are more of a budget conscious person, Anime BS is pretty good value for the money. Here are some examples of games where I know how long I've played them and roughly how much they cost. Like I haven't finished Ace Attorney Trilogy. It cost me like 30 bucks. I played 56 hours. I'm probably going to put in double that. These are also the prices that I got now. These games often go on sale. The price per hour is pretty low, and also these games are really good, and some of them have more replayability than others. Once you finish like Nonary game, you're done. Like the game's done. But yeah. But even though these are games that I played for a lot, there are other games that are not super long affairs. This is more anime BS than it is visual novel. There's a game called Refined Self, a game where you are a robot and your creator has died, and every action you take is measured to determine what kind of a person you are. Did I mention it's a personality test and also you only have 60 minutes? This is by definition short. You can play through it multiple times. I've only done it once, but it looks fun and it has like a lovely aesthetic. The aesthetic does a lot of the anime BS for me. There's games like A Year of Springs, which is actually 3 short visual novels about the experiences of 3 girls. I've played one of these games, One Night Hot Springs, which is a cute, heartwarming story about a trans woman, Haru, trying to go to a hot springs with friends and what that experiences are like and the complications that that has as a trans person, including the anxiety and stuff. It's lovely. And the other stories follow her 2 friends, which I'm going to play at some point. Also short, only maybe like a couple hours. There's a game, I believe it's free, called Lilith Wants to Buy Your Soul, which is exactly what it sounds like. She will ask you a bunch of questions to determine the value of your soul. And also you can like mess around with her a little bit in terms of like answering stupidly and things like that. And then she'll put out an offer for your soul, which you can accept or reject. But once you do, either way, that's the end of the game. If you open the game up afterwards, she's gone. Which I'm sure you can meddle around in like files to fix that. But like, that's the whole experience. It's a one-shot experience. It's 30 minutes. It's fun. And there are other reasons why you should play visual novels. They're accessible. You don't need a high-end PC to play visual novels. If you're playing anime BS, maybe for some games, AI the Somnium Files, Nier, I forget what else. Some of those require high-end PCs, but like most visual novels, not even close. You can play that on like a potato. That's not correct. I tried to see if you could play Doom on a potato, but you cannot. Context switching. Visual novel games, most anime BS games, are easy to pick up and put down. Partly because you can save and quit in different spots in the story, even with something like 13 Sentinels for the Switch and PlayStation. You finish a mission, you finish a little chapter, and then you pause, you put it away. That's it. That's all you got to do. It's easy to pick up and put down mechanically, but it may not be easy to pick up and put down emotionally. But I can't control that. And also free reading. Note, it is not free. Games cost money. And it's not always reading because sometimes the game just talks to you. So it's more like an audiobook in that sense. And oh no, my emotions. And you know what? I just think they're neat. So, oh man, I did it. I did it in under time. I have like 2-ish minutes to spare. That's my panel about anime BS. I hope you've learned what anime BS is, what visual novels are, any of that sort of stuff. If you have questions, if you want recommendations, I have a list of like, here are some chill ones, here are some short ones. You're like, I just want more Danganronpa and Phoenix Wright. I'm like, I got some of those. I will I know them. I'll be in the Discord after this, but also if folks have any questions now, more than happy to answer them. There were definitely some games that I would have liked to have shown more of or like showcase, but I couldn't figure out how to fit them in. If there was one thing to take away, play Slate the Princess. It's really good. Um, it's a really good introduction to visual novels, and it's fun and it's well voice acted and all of that. But there's so many other games that I could have recommended that I couldn't fit in. Yeah, Danganronpa. One thing I didn't mention in reasons to play, you can also, if you want them to be more engaging, get your friends together, voice act them, see what shenanigans you can get up to. That is so much fun. I am doing that right now with Phoenix Wright, the second game, with folks like Dan and Manda, who you might have seen yesterday on my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/nt3rp. Um, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's way more fun with friends because sometimes you're like, that's dumb. That's dumb. I want to present the evidence now. Just let me do that.